The Otharian Academy had always been a place of perfection and discipline. Its crystalline walls reflected light in 1,000 iridescent hues, projecting holographic lessons in floating geometry, quantum linguistics, and interstellar biology. Students from every corner of the galaxy moved with precise grace, their multifaceted eyes and shimmering appendages perfectly synchronized to the rhythm of the day. Fear, confusion, or chaos were practically alien concepts until that morning. A murmur slithered through the hallways, low and hesitant at first, like an invisible predator slinking between the crystalline beams. "They've arrived," whispered one student, its translucent wings fluttering nervously. Another's voice, high-pitched and tremulous, added, "From Earth, with their pets." The term pets hung in the air like a jagged crystal, alien and ominous. Even Professor Valen, a serpentine figure of scales pulsing with bioluminescent anxiety, paused mid-gesture, his tail curling around a chair in an almost defensive arc. When the classroom doors finally slid open, the sound was deafening in its suddenness. Silence gripped the room like a living thing, as if the very air had thickened to watch. Then they stepped through. The first human, tall, broad-shouldered, with a tangled mop of brown hair that defied neatness, walked in as though he owned the floor. Jack Harper, he introduced himself, voice gruff and casual, carrying the subtle scent of dirt and ozone, like a forest after a lightning storm. At his side padded a small, sinewy creature, its fur matted and bristled, eyes glowing with an almost mischievous intelligence. Its claws scraped softly against the crystalline floor, leaving faint, temporary marks that shimmered like scars. The Otharian students froze. Their bodies vibrated in low-frequency fear, their multiple eyes blinking rapidly as they attempted to process the scene. Some fled 3 meters into the air, others levitated in place, trembling, as though floating above the world might somehow protect them from whatever had followed the human here. Jack's companion, sharp-toothed and compact, a predator in miniature, tilted its head, sniffing at a student hovering nearby. The alien squeaked and retreated, its wings folding tightly in a protective gesture. Jack shrugged and continued, a casual grin tugging at his lips. "Don't mind him," Jack said, as if introducing a pet rabbit. "He's friendly, mostly." Before anyone could digest that understatement, a petite girl followed. Sarah Thompson, slight and wiry, with emerald eyes that glimmered with a quiet fire, carried a cylindrical container humming faintly. When she placed it on the desk and opened the lid, a swarm of insectoid creatures erupted, scuttling up walls and across desks in a chaotic ballet. Their translucent bodies glimmered with strange bioluminescence, legs clicking in perfect synchrony. The room erupted into panic. "Oh, gods," hissed one alien student, its voice cracking like fragile glass. "They move with intelligence." "They're pets," Sarah said calmly, sweeping a hand to gesture as the swarm formed intricate patterns in the air. "They just like to explore." The word pets now sounded like a threat. A cluster of alien students shrieked, their bodies convulsing as some attempted to levitate themselves to the ceiling, others curling into protective spheres. Professor Valen's tail lashed back and forth like a warning whip. "Please, everyone, remain calm." A third human appeared then, younger, a boy with freckled cheeks and wiry arms, dragging behind him a quadrupedal creature resembling a cross between a miniature dragon and a bulldog. Its wings twitched nervously, claws clicking softly. It growled at the room, a low, resonant rumble that made the crystalline walls vibrate slightly. Every Otharian student flinched. Jack shrugged again. "They're trained," he said, voice even and casual, as if these responses had been rehearsed 1,000 times. "They know the rules." But the room refused to believe it. The floor quivered under the collective terror of hundreds of alien students. Some muttered protective incantations, others drew intricate glyphs midair to shield themselves. One tiny, transparent student flinched so violently that its body fractured in half before reassembling, a common defense mechanism but terrifying nonetheless to those unfamiliar with the practice. The humans moved through the classroom like ghosts in familiar territory, unconcerned by the chaos. Their pets, predators, scavengers, and creatures that should have been classified as weapons followed in perfect obedience. One clawed creature tugged gently on an alien's robe, testing a boundary, and the alien screeched and leapt 3 meters straight up, tail feathers rattling in panic. Another student hovered near the ceiling, shaking violently while its eyes darted back and forth. Professor Valen cleared his throat, trying once again to assert control over the scene. Sit. Please. This is supposed to be a classroom. His words sounded fragile, like a thin crystal shattering. Jack's grin widened. Don't worry, Professor. Really? They won't bite. His hand rested briefly on the sinewy predator's head, which let out a low purr, a sound that was equal parts menace and affection. Then Sarah's swarm descended in unison, forming a holographic bridge that hovered in front of the human desk, effectively blocking an alien student from approaching. It was mesmerizing, terrifying, and oddly beautiful, a delicate display of power that made every Otharian stop in their tracks. Observe, Sarah said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. They just need guidance. A few of the braver alien students edged closer, curiosity battling terror. One drew a glowing orb, a defensive mechanism, and the swarm reacted immediately, scattering in perfect formation, avoiding the orb without fear. Another student levitated a sharp-edged crystal, trying to measure the humans' reaction. The humans didn't flinch. Their pets adjusted, but only to protect or guide, never to attack. And slowly, ever so slowly, the room began to shift. Fear was still there, palpable and sticky, but beneath it was awe. The humans had arrived like predators from a world that thrived on survival. And yet, they moved with calm precision, teaching a quiet but powerful lesson: danger could be tamed, respected, and integrated. By the time the last human entered, dragging a creature that seemed to ripple in and out of reality itself, the Otharians had stopped fleeing. They watched, wide-eyed and trembling, as Jack and Sarah set their creatures into place like generals organizing a battlefield, without a hint of aggression. Professor Valen's tail flicked nervously. Perhaps we underestimated. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing no words could truly capture what had just happened. Jack sat down finally, legs stretched beneath the desk, companion creatures circling calmly. Sarah's swarm settled like a living carpet around her feet. The alien students whispered, eyes wide with disbelief and fascination. The classroom, once a bastion of calm and order, had become a cage for terror, and yet, strangely, it had never felt more alive. For the first time in the Academy's long history, every student understood these humans had survived worlds that would have destroyed entire species. And now, they were here, in a room that had once been safe, carrying companions that defied reason and teaching, without speaking, that the universe was far more dangerous, and far more extraordinary, than anyone had ever imagined. The next day, the Otharian classroom had not recovered from the shock of the humans' arrival. The walls still shimmered with residual fear, holographic projections flickering in uncertainty, as if the very light itself hesitated to reflect the reality within. The alien students clustered in corners, wings folded tightly, appendages twitching, eyes scanning every shadow. The humans, however, moved with effortless calm, their presence a paradoxical blend of menace and control. Jack Harper slouched in the back row, a small sinewy predator curled at his feet, teeth bared in a casual snarl. He chewed gum lazily, the sound alien in its normality, as if to remind the room that humans, despite the pets they carried, were not inherently chaotic. Beside him, Sarah Thompson crouched, inspecting her swarm of skitters. The insectoid creatures had already claimed their favorite perches, the edges of desks, the ceiling corners, even the shimmering light panels that lined the room. They hummed softly, like 1,000 synchronized heartbeats, and the sound alone made the Otharian students flinch. Professor Valen's scales glimmered nervously. He had spent hours last night attempting to draft a lesson plan that might accommodate the humans and their companions. But the truth was, no protocol, no precaution, and no protective glyph could predict what these creatures, or their handlers, might do. Settle down, Valen hissed, though even he felt the inadequacy of the command. The alien students reluctantly returned to their desks, though many hovered above them, trembling. We are here to continue our study of xenobiology, in a controlled environment. Remember, humans are not typical. Jack yawned audibly. Thanks, Professor, he said, voice dripping sarcasm. His companion purred in approval. We'll behave, mostly. As if to demonstrate, Sarah directed her skitters to the nearest holographic projection. With a flurry of tiny limbs, the swarm assembled cubes, aligning patterns faster than any Otharian student could process. The walls reflected the activity in fractured prisms, creating a dizzying display of light and motion. The alien students recoiled instinctively, some gasping, others dropping their pens or instruments in fear. How are they doing that?" one student squeaked, wings trembling. Its voice was layered with terror and awe. It's impossible." "They're not breaking the rules," Sarah said casually, tilting her head. "They're just fast learners." Jack leaned back, glancing around the room with a smirk. "Earth's a rough place. You learn to adapt or you die." His companion twitched, claws scraping softly against the crystalline floor as if punctuating the statement. The room shivered at the words. Surviving on Earth was an idea almost incomprehensible to the Otharians. Their worlds were curated, safe, designed to limit chaos. The humans' calm authority, coupled with the raw, latent power of their pets, was a revelation and a threat. By mid-morning, chaos had settled into a tense rhythm. The Otharians had begun to edge closer, curiosity battling fear. One small, translucent student reached toward a skitter, trembling as it extended a tendril. The swarm parted immediately, respecting the alien space while maintaining perfect cohesion. The student gasped, stepping back, a mixture of awe and relief washing over its body. Jack and Sarah observed quietly. There was no malice in their eyes, only awareness and patience. They had survived harsher worlds than this, and every interaction, every gesture, was a lesson in subtle command. "Control," Sarah said softly to the humans' pets. "Respect, not force." Her skitters halted mid-motion, forming precise geometric formations before dispersing again. The alien students whispered among themselves. Words like discipline, harmony, and even intelligence were used in ways that had never applied to anything with claws or fangs. Professor Valen tried to continue the lesson on xenobiology, but even he found himself distracted. The humans' pets were not mere companions, they were teachers. Every flick of a tail, every synchronized movement of a swarm, demonstrated principles far beyond any theoretical model. The room was alive with danger, yes, but also with revelation. A loud crash startled everyone. One of the alien students, attempting to hover closer to a curious lizard-like pet, tripped, sending instruments clattering across the floor. The lizard growled, a low, resonant sound that made even Jack's companion sit up and watch with alert ears. The alien froze, wings quivering, and a hum of fear swept the room. Jack leaned forward calmly. "It's okay," he said, reaching out. The lizard lowered its head, sniffed, and relaxed. The alien exhaled audibly, eyes wide in disbelief. "You didn't retaliate," it stammered. "No point," Jack replied. "It's about understanding, not intimidation." Hours passed, and the humans' presence began to reshape the room. The Otharians started experimenting cautiously, testing boundaries. One student brought a crystalline cube toward a skitter, attempting to observe reaction. The swarm ignored aggression but responded to intent, correcting the cube's alignment gently. Another hovered near the sinewy predator, and it allowed inspection, a low purr vibrating through the floor. Fear still lingered, but awe began to bloom in its place. A crisis struck suddenly. A containment hologram, designed to simulate hostile environments, activated improperly, releasing a volatile gas into a corner of the room. Panic flared immediately. Students shrieked, levitated, or curled into defensive spheres. The gas hissed, dangerous to Otharian physiology, and no standard procedure could prevent the spread fast enough. Jack's predator leapt immediately, circling the room, signaling the humans. "Follow me," Jack commanded, voice calm but sharp. He guided the panicked students to safe zones, moving like a shepherd through chaos. The sinewy creature darted between desks, ensuring no one lagged behind, while Sarah's skitters zipped along the floor, sealing vents and neutralizing the gas with precise, instinctive motions. The room watched in stunned silence. Fear had erupted into full-blown terror, and the humans and their pets had converted it into survival, calm and efficient. Every alien student felt their hearts accelerate as awe replaced panic, admiration mingling with lingering apprehension. After the crisis subsided, Professor Valen stepped forward, tail coiling with a nervous but steady rhythm. I am impressed," he said, voice shaky, still processing the demonstration. Your creatures, your methods. I have never seen such control. Jack shrugged. "We don't call them weapons," he said. "We call them friends." Sarah's eyes met the professor's, calm and unwavering. "Fear is a tool," she said quietly. "But it's useless if you don't understand it. You can't control what you don't respect." The room absorbed that lesson with silent reverence. Students lingered, watching every movement, every pet, every subtle signal. Even the most fearful began to experiment, reaching hands toward the creatures, noting the reactions, learning without words. By the end of the day, the Otharian classroom was no longer merely a place of study. It was a proving ground, a sanctuary where fear became respect, where danger was understood rather than avoided. The humans, Deathworlders from a violent planet called Earth, had changed everything. Their pets, once terrifying, were now teachers in their own right, demonstrating that survival and calm could coexist, that danger could be tamed through intelligence and empathy. Professor Valen finally exhaled, tail drooping in relief. He looked at the humans, at the creatures, and at the awestruck students around him. Perhaps Earth is not a world we can comprehend, yet we might learn from it. Jack leaned back, grinning faintly. "You'll get used to it," he said. "Just don't panic too much. We're not here to destroy anything, except ignorance." The classroom, still humming with residual energy, seemed to pulse with that new understanding. Fear had not vanished, it lingered, but it had been transformed, refined, made useful. The humans and their terrifyingly loyal companions had taught the aliens a lesson no lecture could deliver. The world, and the universe, were more dangerous than anyone imagined, but survival, understanding, and respect could turn terror into mastery. For the first time, the Otharians realized that these Deathworlders, with all their strange pets and alien calm, were not here to disrupt, they were here to teach. The days that followed transformed the Otharian classroom into a bizarre ecosystem of controlled chaos. The humans, Jack Harper and Sarah Thompson, moved among their peers with casual authority, accompanied by their terrifyingly loyal pets. The alien students, once paralyzed by fear, now watched with a mixture of awe, trepidation, and tentative curiosity. Every day was a lesson in courage, every interaction a delicate negotiation between instinctive terror and cautious fascination. Jack's sinewy predator had taken up a permanent post at the back of the classroom, a silent guardian that occasionally bared teeth at a wandering student or nudged a fearful hand to encourage contact. Its claws clicked softly against the crystalline floor, a rhythm that became oddly reassuring over time. The alien students began to treat it with cautious respect, observing its behavior, noting its intelligence. Some even whispered to each other that it was not merely a pet, it was a teacher. Sarah's skitters had grown in confidence as well. Once chaotic and unpredictable, the swarm now performed intricate maneuvers at her command, moving as one to assist with holographic projections, solve complex data puzzles, and even clean up minor spills without disrupting the fragile order of the classroom. The Otharians began to study them, fascinated by the precise synchronization, the swarm intelligence, and the way fear could be transformed into efficiency. Professor Valen, once jittery and uncertain, found himself reluctantly admiring the humans. Their calm authority, the subtle respect they demanded from their pets, and the way they remained unflappable in the face of chaos, all of it challenged his understanding of control. He realized that fear, when harnessed correctly, could become a tool for learning rather than an obstacle. Then, one morning, a true test arrived. A containment failure occurred in the experimental lab adjacent to the classroom. A volatile gas, designed for advanced xenobiology experiments, began seeping into the hallways. Its effects were immediate. Alien students convulsed midair, levitating desperately to avoid the toxic fumes. Glyphs flickered and dissolved, delicate crystalline instruments shattered in resonance with panic. For the first time since their arrival, even the humans looked up with mild concern. Jack's predator reacted instantaneously, leaping into action with precision that mirrored the human's own calm decisiveness. It darted through the chaos, guiding stranded students towards safer corridors. Its claws scraped against walls, floors, and desks with controlled power, opening paths while protecting those too terrified to move. Sarah's skitters scattered into the vent systems, weaving through machinery and sealing off the spreading gas. They moved like liquid, their translucent bodies glowing faintly as they synchronized to neutralize danger. Students who had never imagined a creature could act with such purpose gasped, their fear gradually replaced by admiration. Jack grabbed a trembling alien student by the wrist and pulled it toward a safe zone. "Stay close," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. "Trust us." His companions circled them protectively, teeth bared in warning at any approaching hazard. The student, quivering violently, followed without hesitation, slowly learning that fear could coexist with guidance, that trust could emerge even in life-threatening circumstances. By the time the gas was neutralized, the classroom had been transformed once again. What began as terror had become a controlled ballet of action and response. Alien students sat wide-eyed, their appendages still trembling but their eyes glinting with new understanding. Professor Valen, standing amidst the aftermath, let out a long breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. I have underestimated them," he admitted, voice quiet but firm. "And their creatures." His tail flicked once, resting across a chair as he surveyed the room. "Perhaps there is a lesson here that transcends xenobiology. Perhaps Earth is not merely a dangerous world, it is a teacher." Jack leaned back in his chair, the predator curling at his feet, tail flicking lazily. "We don't see danger as something to fear," he said. "We see it as something to survive. Respect it, understand it, and it becomes manageable." Sarah's eyes scanned the room, soft but unwavering. "Fear is natural," she said. "But fear alone teaches nothing. You can panic or you can learn. Our pets, our world, they've taught us that every day." The Otharian students, once frantic and terrified, began to whisper among themselves. They experimented with their own instincts, tentatively extending hands to the humans' pets, observing reactions, testing boundaries. The sinewy predator responded to gentleness, not aggression, the skitters mirrored intent, not threat. Fear, they discovered, could be transformed into respect. Over the next week, the classroom became an entirely different ecosystem. The humans' pets integrated into lessons, flying creatures demonstrated the principles of aerodynamics, the sinewy predator showcased subtle body mechanics, even the phasing quadruped participated in holographic problem-solving. Alien students, once paralyzed by instinctive terror, were now actively engaging, their fear tempered by curiosity and cautious admiration. Professor Valen observed silently, noting the shift in the room. "We have learned," he said quietly to no one in particular, "that control is not always achieved through fear. Sometimes, understanding and mutual respect are more powerful than any spell or weapon." The humans, Deathworlders from a planet where survival demanded every ounce of awareness and courage, had changed the classroom permanently. Their presence, and that of their loyal companions, had taught the aliens a new kind of discipline, one forged not from rules or technology, but from trust, empathy, and the recognition of life's inherent danger. On the final day of the term, Jack and Sarah stood at the front of the classroom. Their pets lay at their feet, calm but alert, eyes gleaming with latent power. The Otharian students, sitting upright, watched in silence. For the first time, fear was gone, replaced by admiration and respect. Professor Valen stepped forward, his voice resonating in the crystalline room. "You have demonstrated more than survival," he said, gesturing toward the humans and their pets. "You have shown courage, control, and the strength to transform fear into wisdom. This is a lesson none of us will forget." Jack grinned faintly. "We're just showing how we live," he said. "Fear is natural. How you handle it, that's what matters." Sarah's skitters circled gently, forming intricate, luminous patterns above the students' heads. "Every world teaches something," she added softly. "Sometimes you just have to survive long enough to learn it." The classroom hummed with a new energy. The humans' pets, once terrifying and misunderstood, had become allies and teachers. The alien students, once frantic with panic, now understood that danger could be faced, respected, and even appreciated. Survival, they realized, was not just instinct, it was intelligence, empathy, and courage. As the twin sons of Othara dipped below the jagged horizon, their light refracting across the crystalline walls, Jack's sinewy predator stretched, yawned, and curled back at his feet. Sarah's skitters glimmered faintly as they returned to their resting positions. The Otharian students, sitting quietly, no longer trembled. They had witnessed mastery over fear, a demonstration that would echo in their minds long after the humans had gone. Professor Valen exhaled slowly, tail flicking in satisfaction. Perhaps Earth is not a world to fear, he mused. Perhaps it is a world to learn from. And in the silence that followed, the lesson was clear. Fear, once a weapon, had become a bridge. Danger, once a threat, had become a teacher. The humans and their terrifyingly loyal pets had arrived not to disrupt, but to transform. The Otharians had glimpsed courage in its rawest form, and they would never forget it. The classroom, once a place of order and fear, had become a sanctuary of understanding. And as the suns vanished behind the mountains, Jack and Sarah left quietly, their pets trailing obediently, leaving behind a legacy far greater than chaos, a legacy of respect, survival, and the extraordinary bond between a human and their monsters.